On this day, way back first time round in student days in Rome, a contingent of us went from the Norbertine College to San Clemente, which is the house, ancient house run by the Irish Dominicans. It was for a specific reason. It was the day on which the saint, whose remains are there, was being celebrated. Cyril. He died on this very day in 869. He had been called, along with his brother Methodius, to Rome by the Holy Father, and they were to be ordained bishops. But it would seem that Cyril fell ill and didn't make it. At that point, he asked to be clothed as a monk, and that's when actually the name Cyril was given. His name actually at baptism was Constantine. His brother, ordained bishop, then returned to his work in the east. He went that time to Pannonia, the present Hungary. But throughout their lives they had ministered in all that eastern bloc, the Slavs essentially. Moravia, Bohemia, Bulgaria, and it would seem that St. Methodius died in the Czech area where he is buried. He, along with his brother, knew the importance of inculturation. They invented their own alphabet, named after them, the Cyrillic alphabet, which one still sees on Eastern icons. It's there in this one from the Ukraine, it's there on that one from Russia. And they translated the liturgical books, the venerable liturgical books, into the language understood by the people. Now we are going here to the period when there was no question of two churches. They were all under the Apostolic See, and therefore they could be called by the Pope, which is what happened. However, their openness of mind met with resistance from other missionaries, notably those of the normal Latin rite, operating in some parts of the same bloc, from Germany and other countries notably, and there was a certain tension which arose. Their work was defended by the Holy Father. Pope John VIII defended Methodius, but he did for a time suspend the use of the Slavonic language in the liturgy, and he restricted the jurisdiction of Methodius. During the last 4 years of his life, St. Methodius dedicated himself to the translation of the Bible and other works into Slavonic. He died later than his brother on April the 6th, 884, or possibly 885. And interestingly enough, the funeral liturgy was conducted in the Greek, Latin and Slavonic rites. It was right at the end of 1980, the 31st of December, that by now Saint John Paul II pronounced that these were to be venerated as co-patrons of Europe, along with St. Benedict. And this therefore is a feast in Europe now. And he had that famous phrase that the church had to learn to breathe again with its two lungs. And his dream was that would be the case by the end of the millennium. Pope Benedict carried on the work. Before he stepped down as Holy Father, he drew up a model by which that could happen. And I believe they would probably have taken on the Eastern date of Easter so as to avoid conflict on that important point. It's happened, of course, in the past, because in 1439 the bishops of the East and the West did unite at Ferrara and then Florence, the Council of Florence, which was an ecumenical council and accepted as such on paper by the East, but then when it came to accepting that at ground level, it did not pass in the East. And the famous phrase was pronounced there in the ambit of Constantinople: we'd rather be under the Saracens than under the Pope of Rome. And so it was, and it fell to the Turks in 1453. Although actually the Emperor of the East of the time was favourable to the Catholic Church, and I believe he was actually Catholic, but that's a historical question. The people, however, didn't let it happen, and it's the worst tragedy that we've had up until at least the Reformation. But we need in our time to recuperate what we have, for by this split we have lost an important part of our being, that balance. We have now only, as it were, the balance of the West and the Protestants coming out of us, and it's not enough. We forget the weight of the East, and it's a big weight which calms things down a lot. Now, there has been a movement to recuperate a lot of the best of the East, notably in the monastic movement. But otherwise as well, people have discovered the importance of icons and of tranquil prayer. And the beauty of the liturgy, the splendour of its fullness, has been appreciated by many a cultured soul in the West in recent years. Now, there has been, here and there, quite a lot of recuperation. We have the interesting phenomenon of Taizé. Now, Taizé, although it was born after the war in a Protestant ambit, has become, in many aspects, very Catholic. It's a centre of prayer for healing of these divisions. The Spirit calmly does do things there, but one thing, of course, the Spirit has done is recuperate this business of the beauty of chant, especially of the style of Eastern chant, with great harmony, repetition and harmony, which works. Harmony works, and also the litanic prayer, that people chant quietly while the main cantor is singing a prayer, litanic prayer, which is very Eastern in style, and it can be brought in also to the universal prayer in the Catholic Church. We do it here every day. The prayer of the faithful is always sung with a simple response like Kyrie eleison in between. It works very well, and certainly is far more dignified than many of the very hurried performances of the prayer of the faithful that happen sometimes elsewhere. These are simple to do and make a huge difference. The whole ambit of the Eastern liturgy is celebratory and not functional, not controlled by the watch. It's a different mentality. And indeed, here, all the liturgy is completely sung, and it's a different ambit altogether. One just enters into mode. But there are places all over the Catholic world where something of that has actually happened. We have noticed, for instance, that spontaneously the Spirit has placed on the heart of monks in the older orders to recuperate certain things. The Trappists are open. The old house of Lerins, which is actually of the old Cistercian block, not the Reformed Trappist one, but they are very strict. Lerins is an island just off the coast of the south of France, near Cannes. And their liturgy is very Eastern in style, at least as regards the Byzantine chant, harmony. We have then the whole great monastic family born in 1950, that of Bethlehem. Now also we have the brothers as well as the sisters, nuns and monks, and these, although separate in different houses, have both this in common, that they have borrowed heavily on Eastern liturgy, and it is very, very solemn, calm and uplifting. It just quietly goes on, and beautiful harmony right through, much use of incense and icons and Eastern gestuality. We have then also the experiment at Cheftoin, where they have two chapels, the Eastern and the Western, and they publish Erenikon, this periodical which goes into what they have in common with the East. We have, not too far from Rome, the monastery of Grottaferrata, which is actually of Eastern origin in the sense that it goes back to the pre-division period. It was founded there and always had the Eastern Rite, but then carried on with the Eastern Rite even after the division in 1054. Now they also have a Western chapel, but it's mainly the Eastern chapel that is the centre of attention. It's very interesting what goes on there. We also have, in the ambit of the charismatic renewal, a great recuperation of the best of the East in quite a few places. A big example would be the Beatitudes, les Béatitudes. There, the liturgy is very Eastern in style, and it works very well, but completely renewed with the gifts of the Spirit and a great openness. But nevertheless, it has been well recuperated, and it just works. The solemn Vespers of Saturday evening goes on for hours, and one is bathed in an atmosphere of otherness. The voices, male and female, do what voices have always done in the Eastern style, and incense and movement and interiority above all do the rest. It works. With regard to what the East can teach us, I learnt it by being exposed to it over quite long periods, and it has always stayed with me. I had two close friends who were Eastern monks. One is now dead. Here he is, Father Barnabas, Archimandrite Barnabas, who actually spoke Welsh. We always spoke Welsh to each other. And he went to the same school as my father, a Welsh boarding school by the sea. Here he is. And he, over the periods I would stay with him, taught me many things about the Eastern Church. And I realized how it is something that one cannot just dismiss. They act as a brake. We, without that brake, sometimes just go too quickly. It's actually like a child growing up in adolescence. He thinks he knows it all and forgets dad and mum. What do they know? Squares. The other is Father Daniel. Now he also, like Father Barnabas, is very Welsh, and he is still alive. He's a bit older than I am, but with both of these I would spend time, and there had been a question more than once whether it might be possible to do something together. It was not. It would have been interesting had it had been possible, and what might have made it a little possible was the fact that the then Anglican Archbishop of Bangor was open to it and something of the sort. But after his rather quick death, at the age of 61, he had cancer, looking up very quickly, that all fizzled out. The Catholic bishop was not willing to carry on that project after his death, so that didn't happen. But I often wonder whether actually something of that nature in the heart of the Welsh Wales might have been a little quiet beacon. They had very good voices, as do most Welsh people, and there is an openness in the Welsh spirit to what is actually uplifting in beauty, and a secret yearning for the ancient. The fascination of St. David has never gone away. It's far enough in the past not to be too close to political division. It's something neutral and transcends all division. And therefore a place of pure prayer and pure beauty, Godward and God-centered, might actually have been a place of healing. Be that as it may, it has not happened and will not happen. But what we need to do is, where we are, to be aware of what we are part of. Something massive, something holy, something divine. And the divine is served by the divine. He has given us a language himself, the divine liturgy, and we have no need to make it better, to tweak it, to invent our own bit, to make it more interesting. That is pride, the demon entering into the divine. I will not serve. In the divine liturgy, man disappears and God gets all the intention and attention of the creature who returns to his true state, nothing. Let all mortal flesh keep silence, and with fear and trembling stand. Wonder nothing earthly minded, for with blessing in his hand, Christ our God to us descended, our full homage to demand. King of kings, yet born of Mary, as of old on earth he stood, Lord of lords in human vesture, in the body and the blood, he will give to all the faithful his own self for heavenly food. Rank on rank the host of heaven spreads its banner on the way, as the light of light descendeth from the realms of endless day, that the powers of hell may vanish as the darkness clears away. At his feet the six-winged seraph, cherubim with sleepless eye, veil their faces to the presence, as with ceaseless voice they cry, Alleluia,